To make the trinket dish, first take your clay, use a rolling pin, and roll it out into a large, flat sheet. Be careful to apply pressure evenly to the rolling pin so that the clay is consistent in its thickness. Your goal is about 1/2 inch thick on the sheet of clay. A good guideline is the thickness of one of your fingers. Lay the sheet of clay out and use a circular cookie cutter to press into the clay and cut out a circular shape. Press the cookie cutter into the clay, wiggle it to make it loose, and then pull out your completed circle. This was just half of a circle for a demonstration. Here's a completed circle that I cut out earlier. An alternative is to use one of the clay glaze containers, trace around it on top of the clay to get a circular shape without having to wait for the cookie cutter. Here's an example of the curved shape that you can get. When you're ready, take your circle of clay about 1/2 inch thick and lay it on your fabric in an open space. Choose the stamp that you want to use to stamp a motif border around this sheet of clay. Putting the stamped end down onto the clay, gently press the design into the clay. Don't press too hard or it will misshape your circle or make your design too deep. Here I am trying to plan out how many stamps will fit around the border without them overlapping or having a large gap. Try to use your eyes and guesstimate how you can best fit your stamp all the way around the edge of your circle of clay. When you're done, you're going to need some newspaper or paper towel, and you're going to be flipping your sheet of clay over so that it's draped over a wadded up ball of newspaper. Flip the clay over, lay it on the newspaper, and gently, very carefully, start to press on the edges of your circle of clay. We're trying to get a domed shape by gently putting the edges and pressing them downward to create sort of a hollow in the center of this dish. This is your opportunity to smooth out any large imperfections, wrinkles, or jagged edges from when you cut the clay out. I'm using water to smooth the jagged edge where I cut out the circle. See from the side the curvature of the dish? Here's an example that I was working on earlier, and you can see how I'm trying to create a curved depression in the center of the dish. The newspaper might make some marks in the center, but they're easily smoothed out. Next, we're going to put a foot on the bottom of the tray, the dish. Take some wedge clay, and I'm going to cut a strip out of this piece, just a thin strip, and then I'm going to smooth out the corners to make a long rope of clay. Here I am tapping the corners and pressing the corners of that strip out so that it's more of a rounded coil. You may need to stretch the clay a little bit to make it long enough. Here's a finished example that I have. This one's ready to apply to the bottom of my trinket dish. We're going to use the slip and score method to attach these two pieces of clay together. Add some water to the clay, working up a layer of liquid slip. This is like the glue. You can also paint on slip from the bucket. Next, slice many little jagged lines into the clay. We're creating texture and we are working up more of the slip in the scored clay. I added a little extra water to make more slip. Both pieces of clay that are going to be attached together need to be slipped and scored. So I'm taking this coil and I'm also making slip on it and scoring it with many shallow slices. Don't cut too deeply because you could cut through the dish, and don't cut too deeply because you could actually create an air pocket. So these are very shallow slices, densely packed. Think about how the two sides of a zipper fit together. I'm trimming down the coil because it was too long. I've formed it into a ring on the bottom of the Trinket dish, and once it's arranged how I want, with some gentle application of pressure, I'm pressing the coil onto the slipped and scored clay. Press them together and then be sure to smooth out any of the score marks that are still visible. When you press from the side, you might see some of the slip ooze out as evidence that you have a firm vacuum seal. A paintbrush can be useful to help smooth away score marks so that you have a high level of craftsmanship. I'm continuing to gently press the two pieces of clay together to make sure they have a secure bond. Now's your chance to also continue to polish your work and refine it, smoothing out any imperfections, scratches, getting rid of crumbs, or whatnot. Always finish your project with your initials or your name so that we can identify it as yours. When I flip this over and remove the newspaper, you'll be able to see the curvature in the Trinket dish, a perfect place for putting coins, keys, jewelry. If the newspaper left indentations in your bowl, those can still be smoothed away with a gentle touch and some water. But you're going to want to leave your dish slumped over the ball of newspaper for as long as possible so that the clay can dry some and stiffen so that it maintains the same curved shape. If you remove it too early and leave it on the table, the soft clay will slump back into more of a flat shape. So we're going to leave it either part of the class or overnight.